He woke before dawn when the rest of the town lay silent under a blanket of mist and dew. He slipped out of bed, soft footsteps echoing in the hallway, while dreams still clung to his pillows. His heart carried a weight heavier than the summer night, but he refused to let it crush his spirit. Tonight marked another restless sleep spent wrestling questions that whispered of doubt and fear. He drank a glass of cold water from the kitchen tap and breathed deeply as the first streaks of dawn painted the sky in pale gold. He closed his eyes and reminded himself of the promise he carried. His actions would speak louder than any words ever could. Outside the small cottage, the earth lay fertile and waiting, as if nature itself encouraged him to rise. He had grown tired of empty promises and hollow assurances of success. Others told him to speak louder, boast of his talents, and shout his ambitions for all to hear. But noise had never moved valleys or shifted mountains. Only steady effort had that kind of power. He kissed his mother on the forehead and told her softly he would return. Soon she nodded her blessing, her gentle eyes shining with hope and quiet pride. He stepped outside and felt the cool morning air brush against his face. Pale, light revealed fields ready for planting. He grabbed a shovel leaning against the barn and looked at the expanse of soil, waiting for seeds to take root and transform into life. His neighbor, old Mr. Carter, appeared at the fence line, a man of graying hair and weathered hands who had tended these fields for decades. Mr. Carter paused and offered him a small nod. No words passed between them, but in that gesture lay respect and understanding. It reinforced his decision to let action carry his voice. Worked until the sun climbed high, burning off the morning chill. He dug row after row, cultivating the earth, planting each tiny seed with care. His fingers moved steadily into the soil and pulled away small stones and debris. Nourishment would follow, water, sunlight, time, and his unwavering persistence. He paused at noon to wipe sweat from his brow and drink water from a bottle at his side. He closed his eyes and pictured the journey ahead. 1,000 miles began with a single step. This field was just the beginning of what he hoped would become something greater. A farm that honored tradition, offered honest produce, and provided his community with sustenance. And every seed he planted now laid the foundation for that dream. He returned home, exhausted but satisfied. The ache in his muscles spoke of honest labor rather than empty chatter. In the kitchen, he prepared a simple meal of rice and vegetables, stirring a pot of broth with careful motions. Each day brought small tasks, but every task held meaning. When words fall silent, action stands tall. Night settled over the land, and he sheltered by his desk with a battered notebook. A pen in hand, he scribbled plans, sketches, and ideas for future ventures. He imagined a small stand at the market where he could sell his first harvest and greet customers with a humble smile. He resisted the urge to call his friends and brag. Instead, he wrote lists of tasks to complete before morning. Came again. Days turned into weeks, and the seedlings emerged into green shoots stretching toward the sky. The fields undulated with promise. Each morning he arrived before sunrise to check the moisture of the soil, to pull weeds, to apply gentle care. With each passing day, the shoots thickened and strengthened. He made no announcements, but neighbors glanced over fences with curiosity, eyeing the transformation with growing admiration. A month later, the vegetables blossomed into vibrant life, their colors vivid against a backdrop of fertile soil. Word spread quietly of his thriving plot. People arrived at his gate, offering to help, to learn to work alongside him. He welcomed them in silence, letting gestures and shared labor communicate gratitude. He showed them how to harvest, which tools to use, how to treat the land with respect. His example inspired others to begin their own patches, seeking to follow the path of purposeful effort. Challenges emerged as seasons shifted toward summer. A sudden drought threatened to wither tender shoots. Clouds baked fields under relentless sun. He rose before daybreak to rig buckets and barrels carrying water from the distant well. He fashioned irrigation channels lining the parched earth with streams of hope. His back ached more than ever, but the green shoots beneath his hands stood revived. On an afternoon scorched by sun, he encountered a stranger wearing a suit, jaded by the bustle of the city. The man examined the fields and nodded appreciatively. He introduced himself as a buyer interested in organic produce. He leaned in close and spoke of contracts, distribution prices, but the farmer did not interrupt. He guided the buyer gently over the rows, offering ripe tomatoes to taste, handing him stalks of kale still wet with dew. His silence spoke volumes. The buyer understood and extended his hand, sealing a deal without a single boastful word. The harvest thrived and autumn approached, bringing crisp air and golden light. The farmer worked with renewed vigor, filling crates with the season's bounty: sturdy carrots, beets, potatoes, leafy greens, vibrant peppers, and plump tomatoes. Each crate carried not only produce but the testament of one man's conviction. He loaded crates onto a modest truck and drove to the town's weekly market. He arranged his stand, neatly placing signs carved by his own hand labeling each variety simply and honestly. No flashy fonts, no proclamations about greatness, just names and prices, and the promise of quality carried in every bite. He greeted curious shoppers. With nods and patient smiles, some asked where he had come from, others what motivated him. He listened and replied softly that action spoke loudest, that he had seen the land's heartbeat and answered it with his own unwavering hands. Customers lined up, drawn by the freshness and his authenticity. A woman returned daily, clutching new recipe ideas. A chef from the city recommended his goods to fellow cooks. Neighboring farmers came to learn from him, swapping stories over piles of squash. At the stall he never sought attention, but everyone noticed as leaves turned russet and drifted to the earth. Anticipation stirred in his chest. He set aside a portion of his yield and returned to the fields where he had first begun. He spread compost and tilled the soil under crisp skies, planting seeds intended for spring. A cycle informed by time, patience, and purpose. He committed that no season would pass without sowing work and hope. Evenings found him seated by a fire in his yard, the glow warming his back. He reflected on the journey that had carried him from restless nights to mornings of labor, afternoons of challenge, and evenings of quiet fulfillment. His hands bore calluses, his jaw set with resolve, and his heart carried peace. He had learned that success is not measured in proclamations, but in the seeds that take root in the world through patient action. Reports reached him that the buyer had arranged for his produce to be featured in select restaurants in the city, praising their flavor, impeccable quality, and story of humble beginnings. Chefs attributed the success not to clever marketing but to the authenticity of the process that tied earth to dinner plate across miles and disparate lives. He did not relish in fame, but accepted it as proof that work well done transcends words. In the midst of winter, he invited neighbors, children, and friends to share a meal around overflowing tables laden with soups, stews, breads, cheeses, fruits preserved during autumn harvest. They ate by candlelight, laughter and stories weaving connections deeper than fences or roads. It was a celebration of community fueled by one man's quiet steadfastness. He taught the children how to plant windowsill gardens indoors during the long cold days, how even small acts of care could yield growth. In their wide eyes he saw a spark lighting from his own conviction. His actions inspired others not through speeches but through living example. Spring returned in gentle waves and work resumed, replacing snow with green. Encouraged by early success, he planned a cooperative, inviting other farmers to share resources, knowledge, and markets. Together they could sustain one another, share risks, and amplify impact. He drafted letters and proposals but left out elaborate promises. Instead, he laid out the facts, gestures of solidarity and willingness to work shoulder to shoulder. He mailed the letters without sending announcements. Hands joined in fields across the region. Roots took hold, trust deepened, and harvest flourished under collective care. Produce labeled with simple marks indicating the cooperative's commitment to integrity and hard work began appearing in markets far beyond the small town. People clung to the B idea that they were buying more than vegetables. They were investing in a vision of mutual support, purpose, and the enduring message that action always holds more weight than words. Years passed, and the farm expanded into orchards, nurseries, and rainwater collection lakes. A community center rose on the farm's edge, offering classes, co-working spaces, and gatherings to foster further collaboration. Across the fields, a modest schoolhouse welcomed children and adults learning sustainable agriculture, business management, and the power of quiet resolve. He remained as he had always been, preferring to walk among the trees unsung, yet known by many. His greatest satisfaction emerged each morning as he bent to plant seeds that would blossom through his absence. He recognized that legacy lives in the hands that carry forward what was begun. He stood once again at dawn, looking over a horizon dotted with green life and human-made landscapes of hope. He closed his eyes and remembered the nights of doubt, the temptation to shout empty slogans, and the decision instead to lean into work. Then he smiled quietly, knowing that those who witnessed his journey understood that success is silent persists.